something that will contribute to that is a little something in the vein of this that I have planned for next year, so be on the lookout for when I put that out.
Hey guys, RanterInShades here, exercise my first Amendment Rights vlog style. You're probably wondering why you're seeing this in your feed, since today isn't December 31st, 2012, or January 1st, 2013.
What's going on here?
Don't worry, you aren't caught in some time paradox. I alluded at the end of both of my 2021 year-end videos to an upcoming project taking place in the next year, and it's a project I've had planned for quite a while. 10 years ago today, as this video's premiering, I graduated high school in 2012. So to commemorate the occasion, I decided to shamelessly rip off a few music reviewers by making my first ever retrospective year-end countdown. I say that like I have plans to do more when I probably won't. I know when we get older, we tend to look back at high school as not being incredibly great, and there's definitely aspects of it that I have every intention of leaving in the past. But if I'm being honest with myself, I can't in good conscience say I hated high school. I have a handful of nice memories from my time there. As much as I'm not the greatest at keeping up with them, I had a nice friend group who I still think highly of as people. There were a good few other people that were alright to be around, and there were a few teachers I remember thinking were cool to have, such as my freshman year math teacher, my sophomore year bio teacher who also ran the school's talent show, my sophomore year Spanish teacher who I have a story involving her yanking out her bra straps and giving them to me for some reason.
Nice.
My junior year history teacher, who I also had for psych my senior year, and of course my band teacher, who also taught the AP music theory class I took that got me waived from Theory 1 in college. To anyone from high school that may be watching this,
What's up?
let me be the first to say welcome to this fun hobby I've cultivated over the last 9 years. We hope you enjoy your visit. Along with the aforementioned AP Theory class, I also enjoyed being in both Honors Wind Ensemble and Honors Jazz Ensemble. Along with being the music encyclopedia and guitar shredder you know me to be today, I was such a shameless band geek that I won the superlative for most musical. Duh, look how adorable I look with my BC Rich. I played drums in the pit band for a couple of the school plays, one of which being Fame, which was fun as shit. I did a senior project involving one of my first experiences in a recording studio. There was the talent show I mentioned earlier, where one of the times I did it, me and two of my friends played a cover of Heat of the Moment by Asia. I remember Halloween when everyone brought their costumes to school and I dressed up as a hair metal rocker. I kind of looked like Mike Tramp of White Lion. There was also the senior show, which was basically my school's take on SNL, which was pretty fun. Junior prom I remember being pretty fun. Yes, laugh at how short I am like I don't already know.
Men of
Shades'
stature are in short supply.
And I remember the slew of grad parties taking place after graduation, including the one me and my friends hosted, being pretty cool. And on top of all that, we were the first class to graduate from the newly built campus that had been in development over the last 1 to 2 years prior. While there's plenty of aspects of high school I look back on about as fondly as my 2013 content, and while I certainly wouldn't call these the best years of my life, there was plenty about my time in high school that I did enjoy, and this video is basically serving as a tribute of sorts to it. Also, here's a drawing I did of Mario saying no in my school planner. I loved this meme that much even back then. Along with that, 2012 in general is a year I look back on pretty fondly as well. This was also the year I started college in Westchester County, New York, where I began immersing myself in the community there, got more into punk and indie music, got into radio where I had a musical variety show that I geeked the hell out on, and laid the groundwork for what would become my first serious band. Before that, there was this awesome vacation I went on with my family and cousins to Costa Rica. Some iconic concerts I went to in 2012 include Van Halen, Red Hot Chili Peppers, which of course I'm wearing the shirt from, and Rush, which was the first show I saw in New York, and where I witnessed Alex Lifeson having some technical issues mid-song and did a little dance while he was waiting for it to get sorted out. I also remember this being the year I got into both How I Met Your Mother and Futurama, and the year of movies like 21 Jump Street, Django Unchained, and of course, Wreck-It Ralph. And in addition to that, while granted these weren't all bands I was listening to at the time, here's my giant list of favorite albums from 2012. A year later would be when I would create this channel. For the past year and a half or so prior, I'd been following this niche online community known as the ranting community, and it looked like something fun to try out and talk about some music-related subjects that I didn't see much coverage of outside of a small handful of people, one of which being one of my primary influences, my YouTube daddy himself, Cover Killer Nation. I've been a part of this community for 9 years, and I'm really grateful for the connections I've made and maintained within it throughout my time on YouTube, irrespective of what I think of the direction the community seems to be headed in nowadays. As most of my audience knows, my main influence to make videos was a guy known as Muse Productions, who's also the person I discovered rants and reviews through. People who knew me in high school knew that I kinda hated pop music at the time, and thus is what led me to discover Muse's videos back in 2010. I remember finding solace in his channel, with his videos helping me to feel validated with the opinions that I had at the time of artists like Justin Bieber, Lady Gaga, and Kesha. In late 2010, early 2011, he had made a transition from rants to doing scripted music reviews, and as much as I very much enjoyed the rants, his reviews were really well made and entertaining, arguably more so than the rants. He was the first person I saw doing year-end pop music countdowns, as I hadn't yet started watching other music reviewers that were known to do the same thing at the end of each year. So I decided when I started my channel that would be a thing I would incorporate into it, with no idea being had that these videos would wind up being some of my most popular. Older viewers might remember that I used to say this as my tagline for the series.
To kick off this new year, I'm going to shamelessly rip off Muse Productions and share my top 10 songs of 2013 according to the Billboard year-end chart.
For as much as I've had my criticisms of the direction he's been going in, this video is also going to serve as a tribute of sorts to Muse, since there's no doubt in my mind that I would not be here were it not for his videos. But these aren't the only reasons 2012 is a special year for me. Thanks in no small part to Muse's reviews, 2012 was also the year where I started coming around on some pop music, and it's actually the year I look back on the fondest from the last decade as far as pop music goes. From around 2007 to 2011, I was basically Stan in the episode of South Park where everything looks and sounds like shit to him with how I viewed a lot of music that was popular on the radio. 2012 was the year I started noticing a potential shift with the rise of indie pop rock, and wondered if it would do to the direct from the last few years what alternative rock did to arena rock in the early 90s. When I started using the Make Pop Music Great Again hashtag for my year-end videos in 2016, it wasn't just me parodying the campaign slogan of a certain man who would end up running the country for 4 years. The gag was made to represent the optimism I remember having in 2012 for the pop music climate to improve. Some, like me, would argue it has for the most part. Others would argue it hasn't. Whatever the case may be, these are my 10 favorite songs from the Billboard year-end chart of 2012. If I'd started making videos a year earlier than I did, which I personally think it was for the best that I didn't, this is what my list would have probably looked like. Obviously, I'm not the first person to make a retrospective countdown for this year, or even a retrospective countdown in general. Even Muse once did a retrospective countdown for the year he graduated high school, which really makes the influence he had on me even more apparent than it already is, and if you haven't noticed that, then you really don't know me as well as you think you do. I also know that unlike with the other videos I've made in the Best and Worst Songs series, I have the benefit of hindsight when it comes to constructing both this list and the Worst Songs video coming after this, looking at these songs from the perspective of a 28-year-old in 2022, rather than the perspective of a 19-year-old in 2012. Whatever the case may be, the rules for this list, as usual, are that the songs have to be on the year-end chart, which is linked in the description if you feel the need to verify that a particular song is indeed there. I say this largely because, spoilers, this list will contain some songs that came out in 2011 that carried over to the next year. And while I understand that some people have criteria like the song happened to come out in the calendar year, come out in the chart year of December to November, or charting at a certain position or higher and or for a certain number of weeks, even aside from the fact that all that matters when putting my lists together is that they have to just be on the year-end chart and that's it, a lot of the music from 2011 was just as much a part of 2012, let alone my 2012. So let's go back in time and take a look at my favorite hit songs of 2012. Number 10. Many years before BTS took over the world and infested society with jumpy K-pop fangirls, there was this guy called Psy, hey that rhymes, who became the most viral sensation of the time. Gangnam Style is responsible for one of my earliest memories of college, where I was shown the music video of this Asian man going on a bunch of wacky, sexy adventures. I found it goofy, yet strangely enjoyable. Next thing I know, my neighbors are in the hall doing the dance, and I remember thinking, I'm only gonna love this song more with the impact it's gonna be having on the world. I've talked about Gangnam Style before in my Guilty Pleasures video that I really need to make a sequel to. Other than this and the 2 BTS songs I've talked about in the Best Songs series so far, I'm not a K-pop fan by any means. But the thing I've always loved about Gangnam Style is the energy. It's a song that basically requires a fun mood, and even to this day, that's always how I felt whenever I've heard the song, whether in a joking context or not. Much like the case with bands such as Rammstein, early 1OK Rock, and X Japan, the music is so exciting that I'm not even put off by the language barrier. I'm sure most people don't know or even care what Psy is saying outside of "Hey, sexy lady." The song is so fun that it really doesn't matter. In my Worst Songs of 2017 video, I put Despacito and Mi Gente in the 2 bottom spots, with that reason being the main thing not putting them higher, despite the latter having one of the worst beats I've ever heard. I'd be lying if I were to say that the language barrier wasn't one of the main reasons I'm only putting Gangnam Style in the number 10 spot here, but the main difference between those 2 songs and Gangnam Style is that it's not taking itself seriously at all. Psy sounds like he's just having a ballin' time and giving 0 fucks, and for as much as the music video kinda went down as a silly meme, it definitely reflects that. I don't really have too much else to say that I didn't already say in the Guilty Pleasures video. Check it out if you haven't seen it. Maybe the sequel will come soon if I feel like starting the script. It's unfortunate that Psy didn't really stick around outside of a follow-up flop called Gentleman, but that period of time when he was on top of the world is pretty nice to think about. For better or worse, the success of Gangnam Style was basically responsible for why internet metrics started being factored into how a song performs on the charts. It was that massive, and much like the viral music videos that came before it, it felt a lot more grassroots than much of the songs that came afterward that have YouTube or even TikTok to thank for its chart success. Regardless, I'll always have some nice memories of all the fun that was had with Gangnam Style, one of the best early 2010s viral sensations. Fuck One More Night for keeping it out of the number 1 spot though, and fuck See You Again for dethroning it as the most viewed video on YouTube. Number 9. Another artist I remember thinking had some potential, only for them to end up fading away, was Jessie J. Her song Price Tag was a nice breath of fresh air, and if you've seen the end of my Ripoffs video, you know that I very much appreciate the message of that song. Then there's this song, Domino, which has nothing to do with the pizza, that I always saw as Jessie really flexing her vocal ability that we only really got a small taste of in Price Tag. Her style isn't exactly my thing, but I always knew she had a really powerful voice that I think set her apart from other pop divas of her time. The instrumentation is really feel-good with its use of guitars, but the thing that really takes me in is Jessie's singing. She has a pretty great range, but she throws in a lot of flutters throughout the verses that are cool to hear against the instrumentation.
You're like a shot of pure gold.
I'd say the lyrics are probably the weakest aspect of Domino, but at the same time, I appreciate that this isn't the kind of song that's trying too hard to blow your mind. I remember she had another song called Do It Like a Dude that I remember coming off like she was essentially trying to be Lady Gaga, and thus was atrocious as shit. And Domino feels like a nice dialing back from the forced nature of a wannabe Lady Gaga sounding song. I guess you could still make a Lady Gaga comparison with the songs of hers that don't sound as in your face, but again, this doesn't come off as blatant, which is exactly the thing that made me see the potential in Jessie that I did. The song is also kind of a haven for unintentional cute references that only a pop culture nerd like me would draw connections to. When she says dirty dancing in the chorus, I do kind of see that being an obvious forced 80s reference that doesn't take a genius to notice. Same within the bridge with the line,
Baby, baby, dancing in the moonlight.
and with the line Take Me Down Like I'm a Domino, I always find myself thinking of the song Knock Me Down by Red Hot Chili Peppers, because that's what you do when you're playing with dominoes, you knock them down. Obviously, yeah, it's a metaphor you don't need to think too hard on, but there's also that sexual innuendo there that makes you go, ah, you want to be taken down, huh? There are also some fun music references that remind you that this isn't the kind of song that requires any kind of overthinking. It's a fun, upbeat pop song, and that's all it really needs to be. The only other thing I remember Jessie J doing was the song that's vastly inferior to the Danger Danger song of the same name, Bang Bang, with Ariana Grande and Nicki Minaj. Her performance in that song was pretty awesome, but it's unfortunate that that was the last real taste of success she had. There aren't really a whole lot of pop artists from my middle and high school years that I find to be amazing outside of the few my audience knows I always have nice things to say about, and that's what made Jessie sticking out from the pack really special to me at the time. While I wish she could have had more longevity, that's probably the thing I'll remember the most about her moment in the sun, how thanks to songs like Price Tag and Domino, it got me to care. Number 8. I actually didn't initially care for We Are Young when it was new, as I found it to be kinda weird and slightly annoying sounding. When Fun released their follow-up single, Some Nights, I was so impressed by the song, to the point where I talked about it in Best Songs of 2013 upon seeing that it was on the year-end chart for that year, that I ended up re-evaluating my perspective on We Are Young. Do I like it as much as Some Nights?
No.
But it has quite a bit going for it that makes me marvel at how a band like this could get as big as they did, in much the same way that Some Nights did. This is one of those songs where it really seems like the chorus is the main selling point. If I ask you what We Are Young is about, you'd probably respond with,
"Oh, it's about being young and taking on the world and living for today and all that."
That's kinda correct, but that's really only scratching the surface. It's actually about a night out at the bar with your friends that gets a little out of hand. The first verse has a much quicker tempo than the rest of the song, as it describes things getting pretty violent, with the implication that Nate Ruess beat his girlfriend and wants to mitigate the situation after the bar closes. It's like if Closing Time by Semisonic told a story. The song is really interesting musically, if that quick tempo first verse is anything to go by. I like the use of piano in addition to the more distorted instruments, and the drums sound cool underneath. I also really like how clear Nate's voice is, along with of course the range he showcases. My only real complaint with him is in the bridge, where there's a guest appearance from R&B artist Janelle Monáe, and the backing vocals layered underneath kind of drown her out, in addition to his own part in the bridge immediately following. But for as sudden as it comes in, the chorus after that dials back with just drums and bass is a pretty cool idea. While Some Nights is clearly the more competent and superior song of Fun's, I really appreciate everything We Are Young is going for. It was really interesting seeing a band like this become so successful with how different they sounded compared to just about every other artist that was popular in the early 2010s. As unconventional as indie music tends to sound, Fun was a band that had an accessible enough sound for them to cross over into the mainstream. It was cool to observe back then, and it's unfortunate that the band ended up going on hiatus a few years later, with guitarist/drummer Jack Antonoff focusing on his production career. Even though We Are Young is more than a typical anthem for good times, I also kind of appreciate that it can function as such. I always think of the spring of 2012 whenever I listen to it or hear it anywhere. This was the time when things were beginning to wind down in high school, everyone was making their college decisions, and just gearing up to be done and enter the next phase of our lives. You hear the mentions of setting the world on fire in the chorus, and it kind of sounds like a cliched ending of a graduation speech. That's the kind of thing that makes my appreciation for We Are Young a lot more sentimental. Just like Nate having his big night out, me and my friends and colleagues at the time were having our big final hurrah that the song kind of correlated with. It's cliched, I know, but that's why We Are Young is always going to be pretty special to me. Number 7. So we've all heard our fair share of breakup songs, right? Well, Somebody That I Used to Know by Gautier, which is what I always imagine Kanye naming a pet goat, takes the thought process that typically comes with writing a breakup song and yeets it. Screw feeling bad about a breakup, now let's look at it through the lens of it being for the best, to the point where you're kinda happy it's over. Much like the case with Fun, this is a song whose success bewildered me at the time. It's a lot more artistic sounding, with its use of tango-sounding acoustic guitar and xylophone, and the music video definitely helps a little too much with giving it an artsy flair. It's a really memorable music video that I still think about whenever the song plays, and you likely think about it too, don't lie. It's okay, we're all friends here, there's no judgment. This song was actually number 1 on the year-end chart for 2012, which shocked me, who initially saw it as a one-off novelty. Unsurprisingly, Gautier ended up going down as basically a one-hit wonder, but I was still really impressed with how much staying power the song ended up having, even if it could, to a degree, be thanks to a remix that put the song to a generic club beat that doesn't fit the song at all. Seriously, this is gross. Gautier's voice is certainly interesting, and his verses, his delivery is kinda mumbly, but not to the point where you can't understand what he's saying. Really though, it's a tone that's fitting for the thought process that's present here. He's reflecting on a past relationship that really wasn't great in retrospect, but one that he did try to stick it out in and see the good in her despite how miserable he was in all actuality. When he says in his second verse, "Well, you said that we would still be friends," it's implied that the relationship ended on decent terms at least. The chorus, however, implies differently. In the chorus, Gautier's vocals are a lot louder and more passionate sounding, showing that he did take issue with the aftermath of the breakup. She's cut him off, playing historical revisionist by acting like the relationship never happened and that he was never anything to her, even going as far as to change her number. I get that breakups are rough, but ending on amicable terms only to pull a 180 like this outside of reason is some real bitch bullshit. And that leaves Gautier to feel like the relationship ending really was for the best. He already felt unhappy in the relationship, but no matter how much he might care for his ex as a person, her actions indicate to him that she's no longer someone he feels like he needs in his life. All she is now is just somebody that he used to know. And as someone who's had fallouts and ended friendships with people that proved themselves to be toxic and a chore to be around, the song's a lot more relatable than I ever could have anticipated 10 years ago. There's also a guest verse from a lady named Kimbra, portraying the ex-girlfriend. For as much as I find Gautier relatable in the song, it's interesting to see another side to the story. She was actually the one to end the relationship, not Gautier. Just like how he felt miserable in the relationship, Kimbra, let's just pretend she's actually the ex, felt screwed over at times, and like she had to think too hard about a deeper meaning behind his words and actions. The reality is that neither of the two were happy, and neither felt that they were right for each other. But for as much as Kimbra's verse gives the kind of context that makes the breakup seem mutual, there's this line.
Said that you could let it go, and I wouldn't catch you hung up on somebody that you used to know.
That almost comes off like gaslighting, like she's saying,
"Why do you even care still? Am I really living in your head rent-free?"
let the man vent! Obviously your feelings are valid, but so are his. Even then, I really like the harmonization between their voices in the chorus following Kimber's verse, and I always found the outro satisfying as well. Somebody That I Used to Know is a song I've always remembered for how artistic and adult it is. For as strange as the song might sound to the average person, I'm glad it held up the way it did, and I'm happy that it ended up being the song of the year in 2012. Also, I'm obligated to give a nod to the legendary CS188, someone I actually started following in 2012, funnily enough, for this legendary YouTube poop. Seriously, if you aren't willing to acknowledge that he's at least one of the best YouTube poopers of all time, I don't think I even know you. Number 6. I haven't had the most positive things to say about Maroon 5 in recent years, but every time I talk about them, I always feel the need to mention their debut album, Songs About Jane, being an album I've held in high regard since my elementary school years, to the point where a video I want to make in the future is a track ranking video about it, like the one I made about Boston's Self-Titled. It's rare that Maroon 5 comes out with a song that actually sounds decent, or even of a similar vibe as their early work, which is why I talked about Sugar in Best Songs of 2015. Before that, they had Moves Like Jagger in 2011 that I thought was pretty fun, and then this song that I actually used to think was by Maroon 5, Stereo Hearts. In actuality, it's by the rap rock group Gym Class Heroes, who were pretty popular in the mid-2000s, with them being signed to Fueled by Ramen, and Fall Out Boy's Patrick Stump featuring on a couple of their singles, with Adam Levine as the guest vocalist singing both the chorus and the bridge. The group is fronted by Travie McCoy, who you might remember from the song Billionaire featuring
My boy.
Bruno Mars. I dig his rapping. He always struck me as being like if Will Smith was less kid-friendly. But the thing that always puts a smile on my face about this song is all the music metaphors. In addition to Adam Levine comparing his heart to a stereo, hence the title, Travie makes comparisons to a record, a song, and a boombox. For as on the nose as the lyrics might be, it's so wholesome and adorable that it ends up hitting a sweet spot. I always found the chorus to be fun shit. In addition to Levine sounding competent, I always really enjoyed the vibe and figured this is how Maroon 5 should have sounded in the 2010s. I'm also a huge sucker for the chromaticism that takes place in the chord progression between the E major and F sharp minor chords. It's a chord change or writing tool that I always get really excited to hear in any song. Stereo Hearts is already a really uplifting song, and it adds so much more color than you realize to what would otherwise be a rather ordinary chord progression of 6-4-1-5. And Travie's verses add some dynamics to the song structurally that complements the energy in the chorus, leading me to honestly view this as one of the most perfect sounding pop rap tunes I think I've ever heard. It's a shame that certain radio stations cut the verses out so it's just the chorus repeating a bunch of times and a couple cuts to the bridge, which is something I made a short video about way back in the day. Don't get me wrong, the chorus is fun, but there's more to the song than just the chorus, let alone Adam Levine's parts, which is why I see that as one of the dumbest and most counterproductive radio edits likely of all time. Stereo Hearts is by Gym Class Heroes featuring Adam Levine. Taking Travie McCoy's parts out basically makes the song sound like it's just an Adam Levine thing, in a way that makes the radio station appear like they're anti-rap. I guess I can understand if the station might not exactly specialize in playing rap, but it's not like Travie's presence on the song really takes away from the overall vibe of the song. And outside of this line in the second verse,
Would you turn my volume up in front of the cops and crank it higher every time they told you to stop?
I guess I could understand finding that to be a bit out there, especially considering there's a bit of innuendo there, but it's not like there's anything really offensive about his bars. It's honestly some of the most inoffensive rapping you could ask for. The only thing I really have a bone to pick with the song in general on is the bridge.
I only pray you'll never leave me behind.
Never leave me.
Because good music can be so hard to find.
I get the metaphor he's going for there, but that's always sounded weird coming from Adam Levine. Music is only as hard to find as you make it. You just need to know the right search terms, the right people to ask for recommendations, or how to navigate the recommendation algorithms on the platforms you're using. But more to the point, I've talked before about when Adam Levine spoke about the state of rock, and how if he really cared about it, he would be making an effort to actually help remedy this problem, especially since he has a much larger platform to actually make a difference than a lot of the bands I listen to that have the same goal. That good music can be so hard to find line makes me think a lot about that, because if it were really
So hard to find.
maybe you could take the time to showcase some lesser known undiscovered talent, or better yet, make that good music yourself that you want to see being made and be accessible to the average person. Other than that, Stereo Hearts is a ton of fun. I always got a lot of enjoyment from it whenever it would come on. For as much as I have my criticisms of Why was I about to say Avril Lavigne? For as much as I have my criticisms of Adam Levine and the direction his band's been going in musically, this is always going to be a song I consider to be a definitive gem from my senior year of high school, and one of the last really great things Levine has been a part of. Number 5. I had no idea when I first heard this song that it was by the same guy that made this banger. Needless to say, this was basically what got me into Gavin DeGraw. But more to the point, when I first heard Not Over You, the one thing I'll always remember thinking is, I'm gonna relate to this song one day, and I hope I never have to, because that's gonna suck shit. The thing about the aftermath of breakups is that both parties want to appear as having the upper hand when all is said and done. Nobody wants to admit that they might be struggling because they're afraid of looking pathetic or in denial or stuck in the past or like they're placing a burden on the other person for why they're feeling this way, like it's their fault. That's always been what Not Over You was a reflection of, and why it came off as really raw to me. It's really uncomfortable, and you can tell that's how he feels saying all this. Because there are a bunch of moments in the song where Gavin isn't so much lying to his ex about if he's okay, but lying to himself. And that's the saddest part. The song doesn't sound angry at all, or even too melancholy. It's trying to be centered, just like Gavin himself is trying to appear. B-flat major is an interesting key to have a song like this in, and its relative minor G functions like the emotional duality when having the sorts of thoughts conveyed in the lyrics. I really like the chord progressions, and the drum beat helps give the song a feel like you're walking around contemplating the truth of the situation. I'm not sure I'd call Not Over You one of the greatest breakup songs ever, but it's really well constructed. And with how piercingly blunt the lyrics come off, it's certainly the kind of song that will come readily to mind if you're ever feeling like Bobby Hill after his breakup with Connie, or Eric Foreman in the season of That 70s Show when Donna dates Luke Wilson. Number 4. Train has become a band with kind of a similar reputation as Maroon 5, a band that used to have some pretty solid material early on before degrading into cheap pop bullshit. They had some pretty cool alternative pop rock stuff in the late 90s, early 2000s like Meet Virginia, Callin' All Angels, and of course, Drops of Goddamn Jupiter. I always found Pat Monahan to be a pretty soulful vocalist, and the band's sound to be more traditional than other pop rock acts of the time. But the turning point that lost Train to a lot of people is of course the overplayed, wimpy, cheery, corny, ukulele-driven generic 4-chord repressed memory known as Hey Soul Sister. I always found Train to be a decent band, but I hated that song so much, if you couldn't tell, and I still find it annoying to this day. What surprised me is when they released their 2012 album California 37, where I'd say they rebounded. Sure, Drive By is also pretty cheery and upbeat, but it never sounded lame to me in the way that Hey Soul Sister did. But then there's 50 Ways to Say Goodbye. The verses in this song might be typical post-breakup lamentation, but they're paired with a chorus whose lines change every other time. The song's basically about Monahan going through a breakup and coming up with a series of lies to tell his friends about why she isn't present at their group outings. And those lies are pretty damn absurd. You really think people are gonna believe your girlfriend fell in a cement mixer full of quicksand, eaten by a lion, or worst of all, got run over by a crappy purple scion? Now you're just being silly, and you're really better off just telling the truth. What's the worst that could happen? Let's get to the real reason this song's on the list, let alone as high as it is. The instrumentation is awesome. It's to the point where I actually feel like calling this my favorite song of Train's. I love the Spanish flavor brought out by both that mariachi trumpet line and classical guitar's rhythm and strumming pattern that make the song sound really sophisticated. And the chord progression in E-flat minor flows greatly, going up 4 degrees each measure, and eventually bringing us to a spicy B-flat dominant 7 to turn the progression around. It really has no right to be as cool as it is. Same with the teetering back and forth chromatic vocal melody Monahan does before the chorus, with just percussion in the back that sounds a tad suspenseful with a hint of comedy to it, almost like something you'd hear in a Broadway musical. And then the chorus zips us from Spanish music to pop punk. Why not? To some, this might come across as stylistic overkill, the likes of which play a role in why prog might not be for everyone, but I honestly love how these two distant styles are brought together in this song. The music getting aggressive basically parallels Monahan putting his bullshit story about his girlfriend dying into action. The pop punk comparison doesn't go unwarranted because it definitely sounds like the kind of progression and tone you'd associate with the stuff. I love how they also throw in a power chord that basically serves as an inversion of D-flat major with the third in the chord, F, in the bass, which I like calling a stretchy third power chord, before going to the B-flat chord with the trumpets coming back. The use of those chords in the progression sounds a lot like something a band like Bayside, a pop punk band known for having a very outside-the-box writing style, and who happen to be my second favorite band, would do. And with that in mind, I'm gonna pretend to be Jack O'Shea if he were signed on to do a guest solo. Let's go! song like 50 Ways to Say Goodbye takes Train from being a decently solid pop rock band to something much more interesting. Drops of Jupiter is a great song that I won't disagree if you argue that it's their best, but this is something else. I could never downplay the band's true capabilities with a song like this in their catalog, no matter how sick to death I still am of Hey Soul Sister. 50 Ways to Say Goodbye is perhaps the song that rocks the hardest that I've heard from Train, to the point where I'm almost questioning if I'm putting it lower on this list than it deserves. This, along with the next two songs on this list, were really neck and neck with which would get the number 2 spot. I guess the overall goofiness in the lyrics is what's keeping it down a little, but I'd say I'm pretty satisfied with how the upper portion of this list is looking. Let's see how. Number 3. Regular viewers of the channel know that Bruno Mars is my favorite current pop artist and someone I really like talking about in this series, but I haven't always been a fan. If you recall in Best Songs of 2016, I began the honorable mention segment where I talked about 24K Magic, the song that's currently my favorite song of Bruno's, with this. Fuck this shit, these singles are garbage. You know, these songs are starting to grow on me. He didn't initially make a great first impression on me. At the time, I thought Just the Way You Are was sappy as shit, and the kind of song teenage girls would pine for a guy to serenade them with, either by blasting it on a boombox outside in front of their window, or even performing it himself. And I to this day view the Lazy song as, well, lazy, as well as being his worst song, and anyone who disagrees is lying to themselves.
I'll be lounging on the couch, just chilling in my Snuggie. Click to MTV so they can teach me how to Dougie.
Are we cringing yet?
I didn't think Bruno Mars would be an artist I'd ever come around on with how cheap these songs were sounding to me. But this song right here, It Will Rain, was where things finally started to click with me. Bruno's done some sad breakup songs before, like Grenade, a song known for being a bit graphic and over the top in the lyrical department, but this one feels a lot more grounded. It Will Rain isn't so much a breakup song, but rather a song that expresses wanting to do whatever it is he has to do to avoid the miserable feelings that come with a breakup, where there'll be no sunlight, no clear skies, and every day, it'll rain. A simple metaphor, I know, but sometimes you don't need to go overboard to express an emotion. The second verse has always been the most interesting part. Bruno mentions how he can tell his girlfriend's parents don't really like him, and for as much as he knows better, it's something that plays into his anxiety about the idea of his relationship ending, especially because he's able to put himself in their shoes and understand why they feel this way about him. But this is also the kind of stuff that motivates him to really show that he can be an adult, and again, avoid having to potentially lose something good. This is really mature, and it was the most mature song I had heard from Bruno at that point. It very well still could be. When we think of Bruno Mars nowadays, we think of all-out funk jams and sensual-sounding material for the bedroom, but this is a really somber-sounding song, with D major being a pretty sweet key to put this in. And it also has a chord progression and feel that sounds reflective of nice times, and that makes sense considering how fearful Bruno is of losing something that's made him so happy. And I've always felt the secondary dominant moment in the chorus where there's an F-sharp 7 followed by a B minor mirrors the tension taking place internally. There's also something calming about the way the chorus ends, and leading into a post-chorus instrumental that sounds like there should be a slow-motion montage of a sunny day to. Not that I want to get too sappy or that this is really an appropriate thing to compare the song to, but I remember the school year it started when the song came out. Back then, while the new campus was still being constructed that I mentioned in the intro, parking at the school was limited, and seniors had to share a parking spot with another senior they would carpool with. I carpooled with two of my friends that lived around my neck of the town. One of them didn't have his license yet, and me and the other friend let him tag along in the carpool. Multiple times when it was the other friend's turn to drive, he'd have the radio on and It Will Rain would be on. And I'd find myself extrapolating that reflecting of nice times combined with fearful tension and tone, and putting it in the context of my final year of high school. It's almost all over, and there'll be a lot of people I'm probably not going to see for a long time outside of whenever I see them post on social media. And for as cool as it would be to maintain the level of closeness I had with them, it wouldn't shock me if I ended up slowly but surely drifting away from that core group of friends I had, as is what tends to happen as you get older. It's like that one quote, at some point in your childhood, you and your friends went outside to play together for the last time and nobody knew it. That's what the song was making me think about. Even writing this part of the script has me feeling pretty emotional about it, and it's so weird to say. But yeah, this song is nice. It might not be my favorite song of Bruno's, but it's a song I always remember for laying the groundwork for me pulling the trigger and becoming the fan of his that I am today. Later in October, I made my first trip home from college, and I remember watching SNL with my mom and brother where Bruno was the musical guest. He performed Locked Out of Heaven, a song I had never heard prior, and it pretty much immediately became my favorite song of his at the time, that I'd go on to talk about in Best Songs of 2013. My journey with Bruno Mars's music was basically more or less documented on my channel ever since then, and for as emotional as It Will Rain has a way of making me feel, it's nice to look back at where it all started. Number 2. If there's a theme you guys might have picked up on throughout this video, it's that much of this list is comprised of cool rock stuff you wouldn't expect to be at this level of popularity. Neon Trees is an alternative rock band I got into around the time I started college through hearing this song on the radio. Now you guys remember how overjoyed I was in Best Songs of 2021 at the amount of rock tunes I got to see be chart successes, right? Well, Everybody Talks is a big part of why I look back at the pop music of 2012 so fondly. Of the rock songs or even rock adjacent songs I've gotten to talk about in this series, this is for sure the one that rocks the hardest. I might have been blown away by the guitar solo in Take What You Want by Post Malone, but one, that's only one aspect of the song, and two, I wouldn't exactly go out of my way to call that a rock song just because it has a cool solo, since it doesn't have the core instrumentation commonly associated with rock. When I first heard Everybody Talks, I had no idea it was even current. I could have sworn it sounded like a band from the 90s or 2000s. It sounded a lot like the Black Crowes in particular. One thing that really made it clear to me that this was a band I should really be looking into once I get home from the car ride I was in, I think this might have been when we got home from that Costa Rica trip I mentioned in the intro, was the vocal performance by Tyler Glenn. He does this cool vibrato in the chorus when shifting his pitch from F to G.
It started with a whisper.
That didn't sound like something you hear a lot of singers do. I remember taking my phone out to Shazam what I was hearing and thinking to myself, why haven't I heard of this band? On top of that, the instrumentation is really fun. E-flat major has always been one of my favorite keys, and while I don't mind that the chord structure makes use of the 1, 4, and 5 chords, which is typical in a lot of popular rock music, the thing I really like that the song uses is the G7 chord before the A-flat major in the second half of the chorus. I wouldn't call the overall sound unique by any means, but it just sounds like a group of dudes just jamming out and having a great time doing so. And ain't that what rock and roll is all about at the end of the day? Equally rock and roll are the lyrics. On the surface, this sounds like stuff a classic rock band would sing with all the drug references and usage of words like addiction, prescription, and overdose. That's what I had thought going into this video. It's kind of a cliche in music, particularly in rock, to compare love and sex to an addiction of sorts. I had no idea until I began the listening/research phase for this video that the song was about Tyler dating a woman who spread rumors that he was gay. Prior to April 2014, around the time Neon Trees released their third album, Pop Psychology, he was in the closet but left some subtle hints about his sexuality in the band's music. I'd always just thought of Everybody Talks as just being a catchy alternative rock song that also happened to be a pop hit, but this completely altered my perception of the song. The talking he speaks of was about this woman gossiping behind his back about something very personal and sensitive to him that he wasn't ready to be open about. And I guess he managed to have the charm and moves to catch her off guard and get her to be like,
Damn, maybe I was wrong about him.
good on you for coming out, all the respect to you, this was very well played and I'm glad you're living comfortably. Again, I remember being super stoked that I was living in a time where a song like this could be a pop hit. I felt this way about plenty of other different sounding songs I've talked about in this series, but Everybody Talks scratches a different kind of itch and hits in a very particular way that I don't really think I could compare to songs like Shut Up and Dance by Walk the Moon or even Good For You by Olivia Rodrigo. And I'm glad this got me to check out the 2 albums Neon Trees had out at the time. They put out 2 more since then. Their most recent one from 2020 flew under my radar until I saw Crash Thompson feature it in his best albums list of that year. And I gotta say, I'm glad this is a band I'm into. They're solid and they definitely come recommended, whether you're only familiar with this song or you just want a rock act to get into. But despite all this, there's one song I think deserves to be put ahead for what it represents as far as the impact it had on me. In case you're wondering, I don't really have an honorable mention for this list. If I had started making videos in 2012, Locked Out of Heaven by Bruno Mars would have been the surefire thing I would have included in that section, since it didn't make the year-end chart that year. And when I'd make my Best Songs of 2013 video, I'd do that thing where I'm like, hell yeah, the song I had for my honorable mention last year made the year-end chart this year, so now I can put it as my number 1 and gush about it some more. But alas, that is not the timeline we live in. I was considering Lights by Ellie Goulding for this list, but the most I really felt like I had to say is something I said about her in 2015 when I talked about Love Me Like You Do. Maybe it's just because I have a thing for women with high, soft voices. I don't know. Anyway, now for a woman that needs no introduction.
Let's all party like tomorrow is the end of the world.
I can already see the comments now. But Shades! This song's from 2011! This doesn't count! Guys, did you not pay attention to that little thing I have written in the bottom left corner of the transition clip? You know, where it says chart position, indicating that this is on the year-end chart for the year in question, the same year-end chart I linked to in the description of all my year-end countdowns, the link I always tell you in the intro to click to if you wish to verify that the song is actually on the year-end chart and isn't just something I'm pulling out of my ass. Scenarios like this are precisely why I do this, because I hate getting comments trying to correct me about a mistake I didn't even make, acting like I violated my own criteria when I did no such thing, so they can take satisfaction in how they were able to get me to be like, oh my god, wow, I'm such an idiot, fuck me, how did I not notice this? Just stop. Anyway, Rollin' in the Deep is a great song. Yeah, I know, this was the Song of the Year in 2011, but I've always believed it really says something about how much impact a song truly had on the culture when it carries over to the next year's year-end chart, no matter where it lands. Adele had 3 other songs make it on in 2012. Set Fire to the Rain at number 12, Someone Like You at number 43, and Rumor Has It at number 64. I like those songs fine, but Rollin' in the Deep is clearly the best of the 4. It would have been cool if Skyfall, the theme from the James Bond movie of the same name, made it on, but Rollin' in the Deep would honestly still be my favorite song of hers to be included on this year-end chart. It's that great and that impactful. But let's put things a little more into perspective. Adele played a hugely significant role in changing my perspective on pop music by showing how genuine it can sound and how genuine of a songwriter and performer she is. While she's second to Bruno Mars for being my favorite current pop artist, since Bruno's more of a full package performer with tons of fun material, while Adele is more of a fantastic singer-songwriter, I'd say she had the more profound impact on me as a music fan than Bruno did in the long run, so she more than deserves the top spot on this list, even if I used the song that was number 1 in 2011. I could have gone with any of the other songs of Adele's that were on the year-end chart, but 2012 or not, Rollin' in the Deep in particular was the song that changed everything.
What you know about rolling down in the deep?
Let's find out.
I'm not sure what I can say about the song that hasn't been said already. The thing I've always really liked about Rollin' in the Deep is that instrumentally, it almost borders on sounding like a rock song. The production has a very bare-bones vibe, almost like a modern jazz record, with the drums sounding pretty big and the piano and bass expanding the overall sound. The bridge is also a cool section that not only makes use of the backing vocals really tastefully, but if you listen carefully, you can hear some bluesy guitar licks that always reminded me of the guitar solo in The Power of Love by Huey Lewis and the News that function in a similar call and response fashion as the backing vocals. Really, that's the thing that makes the song as memorable as it is, how bluesy the melodies are. Adele's singing is soulful, as is to be expected, but the verses when she jumps from the 5th degree to the flat 7th and does a little flip into falsetto, it's a really raw bluesy trick that just sounds rich to hear. Not to mention the way she belts in the chorus sounds like such an explosion, aided by how badass of a key C minor is. Fuck it, I want to solo over this one too. I've talked about a number of sad breakup ballads of Adele's in this series, but Rollin' in the Deep stands out as being more angry and vengeful. As much as the relationship she had with this man could have been something great, he fucked it up and now she wants him to suffer. The thing that I always thought stung was how the backing vocals in the chorus say, "You're gonna wish you never had met me." Not really making clear what it is she's gonna do, but being generous enough to tell the guy to watch your back. That's a lot more scathing and unpredictable than if she were to go and smash the guy's car or tell him, "I hope you get cheated on in your next relationship," unless it has a much stronger effect not just on the guy the song is written for or anyone that's done their partner similarly, but on us as the listeners. For a pop song, this is pretty goddamn brutal. I don't view 2011 as being a pretty great year as far as pop music goes, but Adele was the beacon of hope for me at that time. I still have that view of her to this day, hence why I always get excited when she has a song I can talk about in these videos. While I'm not sure if I should give her all the credit for this, I feel like her success played at least a little part in why 2012's pop music went in the direction that it did. I credit Muse's seasonal Billboard Top 10 reviews he did at the time for getting me to pay attention to this stuff, but I credit Adele for laying the groundwork for what made following the pop scene interesting as someone that's kind of an outsider to the stuff. People that know me and people that are subscribed to me know me as being more of a rock and metal guy, and not to sound pretentious or cocky or anything like that, but I feel like developing the taste in pop that I have that started in this time period helped give me more of an appreciation for music as a craft. That's why I look back on 2012's pop music as fondly as I do, and why I'll always hold it as an example of what we can do in the here and now to make pop music great again. Thank you all so much for watching this video. This was a really special project for me, and I hope you enjoyed this dive into this year that was really important and influential for me. Whether it be my music taste broadening, becoming a better and smarter musician, everything I've learned through my experience running this channel and having the online presence that I do, or just general ways my life has changed, or ways I've changed and grown as a person since those times, I wouldn't be here without 2012. Like I said in the opening statement, I would not by any means call my high school years the best years of my life, but I'm grateful for 2012 for its part in shaping me into the man I am today and laying the groundwork for everything I'd go on to do in my life, both on YouTube and off. When I think back to the person I was in high school, I think of myself as being a well-meaning but naive, cringy tool, and immediately reflect on how far I've come as a person since those times. Maybe I still am a well-meaning but naive, cringy tool, only now with a 4,000 subscriber YouTube channel. But I'd say I'm overall happy with the person I've become since high school. No matter what, it doesn't make me any less grateful for the positive impact those times had on me. So to anyone from high school still watching that made it to the end, thanks for playing the role you did in my upbringing. We might not be as close these days, if we were even close at all, but whatever positive regard I've had from knowing you, thank you for that. To quote the song Days Gone by Slaughter, something I'm still kicking myself for not including in my yearbook quote, but I do have as the caption for the cover photo I have on my Facebook of this picture, memories never fade as you're watching all your days go by. We're not done yet, though. I may look back fondly on songs like these from my senior year, but that doesn't mean the year didn't have its bad apples. We'll look at those in the top 10 worst songs of 2012 coming up next. I'm Shades, and I'll see you next time.
We're gonna party like it's the